October 7th massacre, an event that shattered lives, launched the nation's longest war, and changed Israel forever. We remember the innocent lives murdered, raped, mutilated, the men and women, the elderly, and the children methodically tortured and desecrated. We remember the hostages violently taken, torn from their homes and from their lives, with 48 of them still held captive by Hamas in Gaza. And we stand with their families who have endured 2 years of anguish, still waiting for their return. The wounds of that day and everything that followed remain raw, painfully raw. The mission still unresolved. This anniversary is one of immense grief, but also of resilience. The unbreakable spirit of a people who continue to mourn deeply, to fight, and to stand together. Now on to the talks. According to media reports, Israel and the White House are preparing for the possibility that President Trump may attend the signing ceremony of a potential hostage deal and end of the war, should one materialize. All of the key negotiators are presently in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt for potential breakthrough negotiations to finalize the deal, according to the Trump plan. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Key talks are underway in Sharm el-Sheikh, with U.S. President Donald Trump claiming broad international support for his Gaza peace plan and saying a deal is close. Trump says that negotiations to end the war in Gaza and secure the release of Israeli hostages are very serious and that every other country in the world supports the plan. Speaking alongside Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, Trump said that his teams are working to finalize the deal to bring peace to Gaza and the entire Middle East. Before their departure for Egypt, Trump met top advisors Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, with the White House saying the plan focuses on the immediate return of the hostages and security guarantees for Israel, backed by broad international support.
We're in very serious negotiations to I guess you could say, depending on the way you count, 3,000 years, you could say 500 years, you could say, but that it's been raging for a long time. And I think there's a possibility that we could have peace in the Middle East. It's something even beyond the Gaza situation. We want a release of the hostages immediately, etc. And so our team is over there now. Another team just left, and other countries, literally every country in the world has supported the plan.
Yep.
I don't think there's anybody that hasn't, actually, not that I've seen. But there's a real chance that we could do something, so you may have some questions on that later.
The White House is turning up the pressure to finalize a Gaza peace deal within days. A senior U.S. official told Israel's Channel 12 that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will not leave Egypt until an agreement is reached. Minister Ron Dermer is heading the Israeli team with a deal a real possibility. In an interview with commentator Ben Shapiro, Prime Minister Netanyahu reaffirmed Israel's determination to reach a deal, but only if Israel's conditions are met. Netanyahu praised President Trump for his leadership, saying his involvement could be decisive in bringing hostages home and creating a new regional reality.
We have to finish the Gaza war, which I hope to do very soon, with President Trump's help. Let's get it over with, but we can't get it over with and leave Hamas there in power, aiming its rockets at us. That's not getting it over with. Getting it over with get all our hostages out, which is still before us. We haven't yet done it, and I hope we do, but it's not yet done. And then also get Hamas out of power in Gaza. Make sure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel or to the peace of the region and the world.
Qatari mediators say that there are still many details to be worked out on U.S. President Trump's 20-point plan for the Gaza Strip.
الآن وقت مبكر نحن نتحدث عن أي بدائل لأي خطط. نحن نتحدث عن تنفيذ هذه الخطة وتطبيق هذه الخطة. الأطراف جميعها وافقت على هذه الخطة، وبالتالي ليس هناك الآن حواجز من حيث الموافقة على 20 نقطة التي وردت في خطة الرئيس ترامب. العقبات الآن هي في التطبيق. هذا مذكور نصا في الخطة بأن تسليم الرهان سيكون نهاية الحرب، ونحن ملتزمون بذلك، والولايات المتحدة قالت أنها ملتزمة بذلك، وكل الأطراف ملتزمة بها. كلنا لدينا مخاوف من استئناف الحرب طبعا، وهذا ما حدث سابقا في.
For its part, Hamas is represented at the talks by its deputy leader Khalil al-Hayya, who was recently targeted by Israel in Doha. He is demanding an immediate Israeli withdrawal from Gaza the moment the last hostage is released, a move not in the Trump plan and rejected by Israel. Hamas is also demanding international guarantees to enforce a complete ceasefire and total pullout, going beyond the staged withdrawal envisioned in President Trump's 20-point peace plan. A deal may be close, but details clearly remain for mediators to work out.
The remaining Israeli hostages have now been held in captivity for 2 years and a day. 20 hostages are believed to remain alive. Israel is also expecting the return of 28 bodies held by Hamas. The families organized a mass rally last night attended by some 30,000 people to mark the second anniversary without their loved ones. ILTV's India Naftali is standing by at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. India?
Hi, Sivan. I am standing in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square, which just 2 years ago was an ordinary plaza. Today, it continues to be a memorial and a rallying point for the families of the hostages who are determined to never allow the country or the world forget what happened that October morning when Hamas stormed into Israel and murdered nearly 1,200 people and kidnapped over 250 more into the Gaza Strip. Just last night, those same families held the Bereaved Families Memorial Ceremony, which was the main tribute marking October 7th and was actually organized by the families of the victims themselves.
אחינו, כל בית ישראל, הנתונים בצרה ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה, המקום ירחם עליהם ויוציאם מצרה לרווחה ומאפלה לאורה ומשעבוד לגאולה. השתה בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן.
Over the past 2 years, 140 of the 251 hostages were released alive during temporary ceasefire deals or separate releases, and a handful were rescued in daring IDF operations. We've heard some of their harrowing stories of survival in Gaza. Former hostage Tal Shoham, who was held for over 500 days, described being kept 60 feet underground in a tiny space barely 3 feet wide. Many of the hostages were subjected to beatings, forced to film propaganda videos, and endured extreme social isolation. Former hostage Gadi Moses was held completely alone for his entire 15 months in captivity. Reports also say former captives were given as little as a quarter of a pita a day to eat. But this reality isn't just part of the past. Today, dozens of hostages are still missing. Their fate is unknown, and their conditions are dire. We know this in part because of the most recent images released of hostage Evitar David, where he appeared visibly starving. For Israelis, the fact that 2 years have passed without their loved ones returning is unthinkable.
We are feeling sad, but in time we are soldiers and we are still fighting and we are still waiting to them to come back home, and we are protecting the most special base in the IDF, and everyone needs to come back very soon.
As we speak, there are negotiations going on in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, where President Trump's plans to end the war in Gaza could very well may be the key to bringing the hostages home. Sivan, I've been reporting from Hostage Square for the past 2 years, and it never gets easier. This place is a reminder that 2 years on, this chapter is not closed. And until every hostage is home, Israel's fight and the family's fight is not over. Back to you.
Thank you, India. On October 16th, ILTV News and the Jewish Agency for Israel will mark 2 years since the October 7th massacre with our own powerful 90-minute broadcast. This special event will share survivor testimonies, stories of resilience, and the unity of Jewish communities worldwide. Join us as we honor the victims, support the families, and stand together for Israel's future. Scan the QR code now to sign up and be part of this meaningful program. ILTV's executive editor Mayan Hoffman traveled south on October 7th along Israel's Gaza border, revisiting the communities, soldiers, and memorials forever changed by that day. Let's take a look.
I decided this morning to drive down here to the south in order to experience October 7th, where it happened. 2 years ago on this day, more than 1,200 Israelis were murdered. More than 250 people were taken captive, including 48 that remain in the grips of Hamas in Gaza.
Route 232, once littered with burned cars and bodies, is quiet now. Life has returned, but not peace. Cars come and go, some carrying families and soldiers visiting memorials for those lost. The silence feels heavy, a reminder that Israel's war is not over. Near Kibbutz Sa'ad, a small brown sign points toward the Tatzpitaniyot Memorial for the 15 female observer soldiers murdered when Hamas stormed their Nahal Oz base.
This is a memorial for the observer soldiers, the 15 Tatzpitaniyot, who were murdered by Hamas on October 7th. Only 4 of the observer soldiers that day managed to survive.
From the top of the hill, Gaza is visible in the distance, quiet now except for the occasional echo of explosions. Visitors place flowers and light candles. Many are young women, the same age as those who fell. Further south, Kibbutz Be'eri still bears deep scars.
More than 130 people were murdered here on the kibbutz, 101 of them civilians. In addition, 32 people were taken captive.
In Sderot, a city once emptied of its 35,000 residents, life has tentatively returned.
45 rockets fired directly on Sderot on October 7th. The biggest battle took place at the police station that was ultimately blown up.
On Zikim Beach, just north of Gaza, the sea laps against a closed gate.
Zikim, which is one of the most beautiful beaches in all of Israel, 2 years later, remains closed.
Across Israel, memorial ceremonies marked the anniversary. At Kfar Aza, survivors gathered at 6:29 a.m., the exact moment rockets began 2 years ago. In Kiryat Gat, former hostage Gadi Moses spoke at the Nir Oz Memorial.
לא רק רוצים להקים את המקום שנקרא ניר עוז, את הבית שלנו, אנחנו רוצים להשתקם כקהילה של בני אדם, בעלי ערכים, בעלי חזון, בעלי תקווה.
2 years have passed by, but we're still in the same long day.
Until all the hostages will come back, we didn't finish. What will happen later is later, but the first mission is to bring them home.
As I wrap up my day down here in the south, there are 2 messages that I want to share. One is a message of strength. Israelis are strong, visiting the different kibbutzim. Despite the tears, the people returned to their homes. And also, we are resilient. Although we will never forget the tragedy of October 7th, we have resilience, and we will build back stronger and better than before.
As ceasefire talks show fresh signs of movement, with U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff set to arrive and an invitation to President Trump, we look at what this could mean. I'm now joined by Dr. Gerald Steinberg of NGO Monitor. Thanks, Gerald, for joining.
Happy to be here.
So Israel marks 2 years to the October 7th massacre. The fact that the Gaza deal negotiations are resuming exactly on the anniversary of the massacre, how significant is that timing? And do you believe that this time could be it?
I think we're talking mostly about the events that have happened on the ground over the last few weeks and few months. And the pressure that's on Hamas, first of all, because of the Israeli continued military action in Gaza City. And that's the final stronghold that Hamas has had. And if they lose that, they lose absolutely everything. And I think they want to hold on to that. And there's a sign that they're willing to release the hostages as part of that framework. Then you have President Trump, who came into this process with a 20-point plan about 10 days ago and seems to be very much determined to force this through, to force an agreement, putting pressure also on Qatar, also on Turkey, but also on Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel. So you see all of the principals gathered together in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, trying to work out an agreement which will satisfy the fundamental interests of all the parties. That's not going to be easy, but the American presence and pressure is very, very significant.
Now, the Israeli Prime Minister's office expressed very cautious optimism about progress in these talks in Sharm el-Sheikh. What do you think are the real obstacles or sticking points that still stand in the way from agreement to implementation?
The main thing is Hamas. Hamas would have to give up the hostages, and according to the Trump plan, within 72 hours, everything, everybody, not just the hostages that are alive. We estimate about 28 people who've been in Gaza being tortured heinously for 2 full years, plus a number of bodies that have been held by Hamas. They're demanding prices that Israel's not willing to pay. They're demanding the release of many of the terrorists who attacked on October 7th that are still alive and in Israeli jails. That's a major sticking point. That's going to be difficult. It's up to Qatar and Turkey to threaten Hamas, and that means the United States has to put pressure on those two governments, on Erdogan in Turkey, on the emir in Qatar and the prime minister, to force Hamas to say, if you don't comply, we will not allow your officials to hide in our countries. That's a tough job, but I think it's possible. I share the cautious optimism. Of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the chief negotiator Ron Dermer, who joined the talks today, are the ones who know most about what's going on. If they're cautiously optimistic, I think we should also be cautiously optimistic.
Now, you mentioned the mediators. Egypt and Qatar are again in the spotlight. Do you sense a shift in their approach since previous failed rounds, especially now with all the international attention to Trump's plan?
I wouldn't call them mediators. They're actually players. First of all, Qatar has provided the support for Hamas for many, many years. That's the home of the Muslim Brotherhood. And in some ways, although Trump has supported Qatar, and they had this defense agreement announcement, the United States will defend Qatar against any foreign attack, hinting both at Israel and Iran, both of which had hit targets in Qatar over the last few months. But that's also an embrace. It's a bear hug. It's saying to Qatar, we will defend you, we will support you, but you've got to do what we are asking you to do. Demanding may be the more accurate term. If Qatar doesn't deliver, that could really be a major blow, and Trump will not be happy. He won't get his Nobel Peace Prize, among other things. Turkey, not as significant, but also a source of pressure. Egypt is a location, but the Egyptians don't really bring much to the table in terms of pressure, in terms of deliverables. They are there, they provide the logistics, they provide the security to some degree, but the real negotiator, the real mediator is the United States. It's a very active mediator. The American government, Trump, Witkoff, the others, are putting tremendous pressure also on Prime Minister Netanyahu. There's not a lot of Israeli flexibility here. The Hamas is demanding the release of these terrorist prisoners, and the numbers are outrageous. There's going to have to be some sort of concession also from Netanyahu and the Israeli government. That's going to be very painful.
Now, Israel is in the longest war in its history. It's marking 2 years to the greatest atrocity of its people since the Holocaust. Just briefly, if you can tell me, do you feel hope now or still grave concern?
I've been optimistic from the beginning. Of course, it was a very terrible October 7th, the Simchat Torah of 2 years ago, was something that none of us could possibly have expected. And I don't think as an Israeli, as a society, we've really understood what happened. We can't until this war is over. But I think in the last 2 years, Israel has done a job that nobody else could have expected. That all the pundits, all the analysts that I know outside of Israel said was impossible, that Israel would have to compromise and allow Hamas to maintain its foothold in Gaza. Well, they've almost been totally defeated. If they hold on to anything, it'll be a very, very little sliver, and it's going to be very hard for them to rebuild. Israel has come out of this much stronger, unfortunately, after paying a very, very heavy price, not only with 1,200 people killed on October 7th and the hostages, but also hundreds of soldiers have died in fighting so that Israel can survive. But I think there are many good indications that Israel will thrive once we have this behind us.
Dr. Gerald Steinberg, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's day 733 of the war in Gaza, 2 years and a day since Hamas launched a massacre on October 7th, 2023. With ceasefire negotiations underway, the army continues operations against Hamas, while Hamas fired rockets towards Israel. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Amid ceasefire talks underway in Sharm el-Sheikh, the IDF is not advancing on Gaza City, but continues intensive military activities inside the Gaza Strip. The army conducted precision strikes and ground raids targeting remaining Hamas strongholds. Over the weekend, troops from the 98th Division operated in central Gaza, eliminating dozens of terror operatives and uncovering weapons caches in tunnel networks near Deir el-Balach. In Khan Yunis, special forces carried out a targeted operation against the Hamas command cell responsible for coordinating rocket fire. The IDF said several senior operatives were killed, and strike footage confirms direct hits on command and control sites. In northern Gaza, drones struck mortar launch crews preparing to fire on Israeli communities near the border. No casualties were reported inside Israel. Yesterday, on the second anniversary of the October 7th war, Hamas marked the date with a barrage of rockets toward southern Israel. They targeted communities in the Shara Negev and Sderot regions. Most were intercepted by Iron Dome, while several fell in open areas, causing no injuries but triggering widespread alarms. The IDF said operations will continue to maintain pressure on Hamas, ensure the release of hostages, and defend Israeli communities, even as ceasefire talks gain momentum.
The Israeli Navy has successfully intercepted a new flotilla attempting to break the legal naval blockade on Gaza, preventing the vessels from entering a combat zone. 9 boats with about 100 activists were stopped at sea and were escorted to an Israeli port. The foreign ministry said this was another futile attempt to violate the blockade. All passengers are safe and in good health and are expected to be promptly deported. Footage shows Israeli Navy forces boarding the vessels peacefully, underscoring Israel's control and determination to protect its coastline. In recent weeks, several flotilla attempts have been intercepted in a similar manner, with vessels diverted to Israeli ports and foreign activists deported after short detention. Israel says these missions are political PR stunts that endanger lives, reaffirming that the naval blockade is legal and enforced to prevent smuggling of arms into Gaza. Yesterday, over the holiday of Sukkot, Israel marked 2 years since the horrific October 7th massacre, an event that shattered lives, launched the nation's longest war, and changed Israel forever. We remember the innocent lives murdered, raped, mutilated, the men and women, the elderly, and the children methodically tortured and desecrated. We remember the hostages violently taken, torn from their homes and from their lives, with 48 of them still held captive by Hamas in Gaza. And we stand with their families who have endured 2 years of anguish, still waiting for their return. The wounds of that day and everything that followed remain raw, painfully raw. The mission still unresolved. This anniversary is one of immense grief, but also of resilience. The unbreakable spirit of a people who continue to mourn deeply, to fight, and to stand together. Now on to the talks. According to media reports, Israel and the White House are preparing for the possibility that President Trump may attend the signing ceremony of a potential hostage deal and end of the war, should one materialize. All of the key negotiators are presently in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt for potential breakthrough negotiations to finalize the deal, according to the Trump plan. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Key talks are underway in Sharm el-Sheikh, with U.S. President Donald Trump claiming broad international support for his Gaza peace plan and saying a deal is close. Trump says that negotiations to end the war in Gaza and secure the release of Israeli hostages are very serious, and that every other country in the world supports the plan. Speaking alongside Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, Trump said that his teams are working to finalize the deal to bring peace to Gaza and the entire Middle East. Before their departure for Egypt, Trump met top advisors Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, with the White House saying the plan focuses on the immediate return of the hostages and security guarantees for Israel, backed by broad international support.
We're in very serious negotiations to I guess you could say, depending on the way you count, 3,000 years, you could say 500 years, you could say, but that it's been raging for a long time. And I think there's a possibility that we could have peace in the Middle East. It's something even beyond the Gaza situation. We want a release of the hostages immediately, etc. And so our team is over there now. Another team just left, and other countries, literally every country in the world has supported the plan. Yep. I don't think there's anybody that hasn't, actually, not that I've seen. But there's a real chance that we could do something, so you may have some questions on that later.
The White House is turning up the pressure to finalize a Gaza peace deal within days. A senior U.S. official told Israel's Channel 12 that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will not leave Egypt until an agreement is reached. Minister Ron Dermer